Good day, Market Chameleons, and everyone joining us for the first time. Thanks for coming by and checking out the Market Chameleon pre-market show. Before we get started, let's take a look at the share disclaimer. Please be aware that neither Dimitri, myself, or Market Chameleon are registered investment advisors or a broker-dealer. If you're searching for investment advice, please reach out to a licensed professional. This webinar, like all our webinar shows, is for informational purposes only concerning Market Chameleon tools and products. With that, one last look at the disclaimer. And let's welcome Dimitri Pargamonik to the stage. How you doing, D?
Good morning, Will. How are you?
Great. And today we're going to talk about closing auction screener.
Yeah. Let me share
Right.
my screen. And this is also actually a new feature that we added yesterday. And I'm going to navigate to it under stocks. And we talked about yesterday the opening auction. Today we'll talk about the closing auction. So under stocks on the left-hand side, click on closing auction. We're going to come to this screener, and let me sort this by volume. So I'm going to do highest volume up here. And what this particular report is shown is the closing trade of the official closing trade of the day. Okay, so when we talk about regular trading hours, you have continuous trading. We have an opening auction that we discussed yesterday. Then we have these continuous trading, but then we have this official closing trade, and that isn't based on the last trade of regular trading hours. It's actually a single price auction that accumulates buy and sell orders that are designated to be executed at the close. And sometimes you'll see even order imbalances at the market close. But these are trades that are designated to be executed at the close. And what the specialist does is takes that imbalance and matches them up at the most balanced price. Okay, so if you, for example, in the middle of the day, say I want to buy 1,000 shares on the market close, just send in a market buy order at the market close. And if you put that in at 2 o'clock, well, that won't get executed until the official close. Okay, that's participating on that closing auction. And the closing auction is used by a lot of professional or institutional traders most of the time to rebalance or hedge a portfolio. So when you think about like funds that are calculated based on net asset value, well, their net asset value will be based or priced off the official closing price. Like a mutual fund is they're priced based on net asset value using official closing prices. So for them, they can't execute a trade at 2 o'clock because that could be a different price than the official closing price. So their NAV needs that closing price. There's a rehedging or rebalancing of portfolios. Sometimes you might have a VWAP that needs to get cleaned up that didn't get executed fully. May get designated, to for the balance to use the closing and a closing price. So what we're looking at is a special order type. Okay, this is a special order type, and in this report, what we could do is take a look at the volume and the price that it closed at, and start making a little bit of an analysis to see what may have happened during that closing price. So let's just read it from left to right here. We see the first symbol, NVDA, that's NVIDIA. The closing price was $162.88. And then we could start comparing that reference price a little bit. We could compare it to the previous day's close. So we see that on the day, NVIDIA was higher, right? So 1.1% on the day. Also, we could compare it to other reference prices. So here in in this situation, we're looking at the last 1 minute VWAP price of the day in regular trading hours. So this is right before the closing price. Where was the stock trading at that minute? All right. So that in the minute leading up to the closing price, did we trade close to that price or very far away? If you're trading far away, could suggest a big order imbalance that push that, price further away. Sometimes you'll see that, not all the time. Usually you shouldn't, but sometimes you'll see a price that will deviate from where the stock was really trading right up to the close. Okay, so here it's within a penny, so that's right where the stock was trading. Um, the other thing that it could indicate is if the stock traded at the close at a higher price than where it was the previous minute, that could indicate that there's maybe a slight imbalance to the buy side. Okay, um, and that's because when the stock is on an uptick, right? When we look at a stock that's on an uptick, the assumption is more buyers than sellers because you need buyers to push it higher. If it's on a downtick, more sellers than buyers. You need sellers to push it lower. But at the same time, for a specialist to participate on it, right? For if a specialist uh, will step in from inventory on the liquidity side, right? So the specialist, if on an uptick, will sell stock. On a downtick, will buy stock. Okay, so when we look at the which side that it could be on, we look for uptick and downticks for some clues of where there might have been some type of an imbalance. Like so, if we see a very really big price change from the last minute, that could suggest, let me see if we see any like maybe something like this was down $11. I mean, this is a high price stock. But if we see a relatively, maybe bigger, maybe something like this, this is, we'd want to see more volume too. It could suggest a bigger um, imbalance in the buys versus sells. So let's come back to the volume. And you shouldn't typically, you'll see that sometimes, but typically it should be close to where it closed. Um, so that's looking at the price, reference prices, right? Closing price. Well, was the stock up or down on the day? Was the last uh, how did the stock close relative to the most recent trading leading up to it, right? The last 1 minute VWAP. But then we want to compare it to the volume. Was it was the volume significant? Okay, so here we see that the closing volume. So this is the volume on that closing auction, not for the day, but the closing auction volume was 10.3 million for Nvidia. Is that which is translates to $1.7 billion worth of stock? Okay, 10 million shares, 10.3 million shares times the volume was $1.7 billion worth of stock. But is that a lot relative to Nvidia? It could be a lot relative to a different stock, but what about to Nvidia? Where does it usually, how much stock usually trades up at the close? So what we could do is create a relative volume. The relative volume takes today's volume divided by the average daily volume. What's the average volume on the day? So it looks back in history, I think the last 30 days, and says takes the average of those, and then we get a ratio. Today's volume divided by the daily average will give us this ratio. So below 1 suggests today's volume is lower than the average daily. above one. The average, it was higher than the average, and this gives us kind of by the ratio of how much. So yesterday we were below the average, so not significant uh, volume for NVIDIA at the close. Okay, so now what we could do is compare price action versus volume uh, action, right? So because we want to see uh, if the volume, how much volume supported that price action. Um, and up top for the closing auction, we have this kind of calendar, which lets us see in aggregate, maybe in aggregate, like what's going on in the market. Maybe it's not just one stock we're looking at, but just in aggregate, how much trading volume was there, and was there big uptick or downtick in there. So based on the uptick and downticks, we have this count 3,800 down to 3,200 versus volume 416 million traded on an uptick versus 374 on a downtick, close there, with $33.7 billion worth of stock at the close trading on an uptick, $22.6 billion worth of stock traded at the close on the downtick. So this gives us kind of a visual comparison, which we could kind of just look back, and like these numbers look kind of in line, maybe um, they look kind of around the averages. July 3rd was a lighter day, but that was right before the holiday. But everything else looks about 60 to some like $70,000 worth of stock, or 60, 50, between 50 and $70 billion worth of stock traded at the end of the day. So nothing unusual here. Maybe if we saw like, you know, $500 billion worth of stock, and it usually trades, maybe something's going on in the market, flood of orders. But here, just eyeballing it, we look like, nothing unusual yesterday happened on that liquidity event at the market close. Um, well, I'm going to stop there. I think I covered everything I wanted to today regarding this particular report.
Well, that's a great new report, D. Thanks for bringing that to the Chameleon community. Everyone, thanks for joining us. D, great job today.
All right. Thanks, Will. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Stay safe out there and have a great trading day.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow, buddy. Thanks, everyone, for joining the Chameleon community today. Remember to follow us on all the social platforms. Wow, something's going on with my camera. I'm like half-faced right now. Maybe it's the lighting. But everyone, thanks for joining us. Remember, follow, like us everywhere. Give us a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. Everyone, have a great trading today. Stay safe out there and trade in peace. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.